has a salesman talked himself right out of a sale to you? Story 1. I was broke but desperately needed a new car, so I went down to a local dealership to see if they had anything with a monthly payment I could afford. I handed over the keys to my car so they could do an appraisal, but I didn't even get a chance to fully explain my situation before they were shoving me in an Infiniti I knew was beyond my price range. I test drove it just to humor the sales guy while explaining that I needed something cheaper than this, but he just kept saying, well, see how the financing works out. We get back to the dealership and he tells me he wants to run my credit. The pushiness has already turned me off completely, so I've already decided I'm not buying from them. I tell him no. He looks at me like I just threw in his face. You won't let me run your credit, he said with stunned incredulity, and then he started calling out to the other salesman. He won't let me run his credit. Can you believe that? The other salesmen all shared his shock, like I was committing some unforgivable insult by not letting him run my credit. Next thing I know, I'm being herded into a manager's office, where he starts giving me this spiel about how I clearly don't appreciate how much they're trying to help me out. But I don't want the car, I said. He continued on like I said nothing, telling me how much they're trying to help me out and how I don't realize what a great deal they can make me. I have finally had enough though, so I said, listen, I am not buying that car from you, and at this point there is nothing you could say or do to get me to buy any car from you, so give me back the keys to my car so I can go somewhere else. And then he actually said to me, I'll give you back your keys when I'm ready. He realized almost immediately that he had up though, because as soon as he said it he got up and went and got my keys. At that point I was so enraged that I probably would have punched him if hadn't gotten up to get them immediately. I drove off and never went back. TLDR went used car shopping, and used car salesmen tried to bully and intimidate me into buying a car I didn't want and couldn't afford anyway. Story 2. Not me, but my parents. My mom and dad were meeting with a sales guy who worked for a pool company when they were looking to get a pool built. He was a standard sales guy, and at one point tried to mention some add-on or something. My mom started to interject, and the sales guy was basically like, oh, don't worry. Why don't your husband and I talk about the money details? He said a few other things along those lines, and was overly condescending, the whole how about you sit tight while the men talk business sort of mentality. My mom looked at the guy for a second, then to my dad, then stood up and said, you know what, I think we're done here. As she and my dad stood up to leave, the sales guy apparently kind of stammered, then smirked, looked at my dad, and said, oh come on, haha, okay let's continue. Thinking it was some joke, my dad responded, nope, you heard my wife, we're out of here, and that was that. Story 3. I've posted this before. A car salesman told me the van I was looking to buy had brand new brakes and tires. Pick something less obvious to lie about. I just went back to the van, checked, and sure enough the tires were almost bald and the rotors were grooved to the touch. He got his manager involved, and now they're trying to convince me that the work was done like how, but I'm apparently an idiot. They didn't say that, but they knew I caught them in a lie, so I just left. This experience was the last straw that convinced me to buy a brand new car instead. Story 4. I went with my wife to buy a car. The salesman said that another couple were also looking to buy it, but he would prefer us to have it because they were homosexuals. He even said homosexuals in that stereotypical gay voice and went limp wrist. I hope those guys are happy with their car. Story 5. I was at a furniture store looking for a new dresser. I found one for a reasonable price and might have come back after doing some more shopping around, if the salesman hadn't tried to upsell a couch despite me saying repeatedly that we do not need a couch. Story 6. Went to a Honda dealership to look at a Civic, and the sales dude told me they didn't have any in stock somehow. He showed me an Accord, which was nice and all, but I was looking for something cheaper and with better MPG. He tried to convince me to buy it by saying it was heavier, which meant it was more reliable. I laughed at him and left. Story 7. My dad and I were out shopping for my first car. Me being 16 and stupid, I found a used Challenger that I wanted desperately, and to my immense surprise my dad agreed to co-sign for me. As my dad and I were negotiating the price of the car and what things the dealership could add to sweeten the deal, the salesman implies that my father's 16-year-old daughter was his other woman, and that my 42-year-old father was going through a midlife crisis. My father turned white and then the same beautiful cherry red of the Challenger. And needless to say, I did not get that car. Instead of getting a cool car that I would have inevitably gotten a surplus number of speeding tickets with, I bought my aunt's '99 Ford Explorer. After replacing parts of the AC system, it runs like a champ. I love that SUV. The Explorer is a small American SUV. It is bigger than most European first cars. I know it's terrifying that a licensed 16-year-olds would drive it. If it's any consolation, I spent most of my time driving in very rural areas my first 6 years driving. Yes, the insurance would have been absolutely astronomical if I had actually managed to get the Challenger. In hindsight, I'm fairly certain it was my dad attempting to show me how to buy a car from a dealership. 16-year-old me thought he was cool as for at least entertaining the idea. My father's not Roy Moore, we're from Georgia, not Alabama. You gotta wait till they're 18 to diddle your relatives in Georgia. Story 8. Asked a Subaru salesman what the best price he could give me was on a 2014 Crosstrek with 40k miles. He told me the same price that a new one goes for. I informed him of that and asked why I would buy this one for that price instead of just buying a new one. All he said was that they hold their value really well. That was the end of my search at that dealership. Story 9. GNC. Told the guy I was looking for a pre-workout. He asks what I usually use. I tell him and he literally laughed at me, then shows me a new brand that's about twice the cost of my usual brand. Meanwhile he's throwing out a bunch of scientific nutritional terms. I left and haven't been back. Story 10. When I was in the army, I went to Best Buy to buy a car stereo. After picking one out, and talking to the sales rep while we waited for another rep to grab the radio from the back, the rep I was talking to started talking to me about God and how women are demons and I need to stay away from them. At this point, I didn't really know what to say, so I just tried to change the subject. He then asked me if I had a GF. I told him yes, but she has been in Afghanistan for the last 6 months. He then told me that her being deployed is a blessing in disguise because now she won't tempt me in committing sin. I just walked out after that. I was too shocked to actually say anything. Story 11 was buying a laptop for university and I was looking at what was available in Future Shop and the salesman came over and started completely bullshitting me. Maybe he thought because I was a girl I didn't know what computer parts mean. Maybe he was genuinely stupid, but I ended up buying a computer elsewhere as that guy got on my nerves. Story 12 I was looking at new laptops, dragged my then boyfriend into the store with me. Every time I would ask a question mainly about if an item was in stock, the sales guy would look at my boyfriend and answer. The only time he spoke directly to me was to say, "It comes in pink." After that I was not going to be buying anything from that guy. Edit corrected drug, although he was at the beginning of his heroin addiction so not entirely wrong. Story 13 called me about 20 times in the course of 3 days while we were in the ICU with our 3-year-old daughter due to a medical emergency. They wanted us to set up an appointment to get a roofing quote. We explained to them multiple times what happened, to stop and we'd call them back, but they kept calling. Story 14 we showed up in out broke clothes looking at refrigerators. The one we looked at didn't have a tag, so the salesman said head look it up. He never returns, we go looking, he's helping an attractive couple with clothes they didn't sniff that morning. Well, we get another salesman, he says it's $999, our limit was $1,200 and ordered it. We even got 3 replacement water filters for the price of 2, he got the 50 commission, other guy probably didn't get his sale. Story 15 I was out looking for a reading chair, something smaller than a love seat but bigger than an armchair. Furniture store just didn't really have anything that was perfect and Mr. Pushy kept showing me chairs I had no interest in. I just wanted to look around the store so I looked at what he showed me and said it was pretty and I would think about it, then turned to look around. He proceeded to ask me if I needed to maybe call my husband or boyfriend to get permission to buy the overpriced chair I had called pretty. Oh no. I politely informed him that as an adult I didn't need permission from anyone for anything, and that he had officially found the easiest way to lose a sale, promptly left without waiting for a reply. Story 16 when I was just out of school and looking for my own car insurance, my dad helped me narrow down companies and contacted an agent for me to get the ball rolling. The agent called me to go over things, but then started trying to upsell me a renter policy on top of the auto policy. Oh, your dad asked me to also set this up for you, no? No, he didn't. Lying is not a good way to get business from me. Story 17 a salesman got really pushy with me when it came to the extended warranty on a used Mustang. I was a mechanic for a while and restore old vehicles as a hobby, but he told me that I wouldn't know how to work on newer cars. The guy wouldn't take no for an answer, so I told him that I changed my mind. Story 18 was looking to buy solar panels for my house. Got one consultation from a really nice saleswoman who was very friendly, but completely knew her inside and out, had done her research, had printouts of my house's roof from Google Earth, showed me how the panels would lay out, etc. I told her I was going to get a few other quotes and she said that was perfectly fine and please just let her know what I decided. So I call around and set up 3 other quotes. First 2 were fine, just more expensive or not as good terms overall. The third place though, Varengo Solar, yikes. I got a call from their sales guy who refused to come to the property, said he could do it all from the office. So he looks at the roof printout and tells me that he can offer around 23 of the panels as the other companies. I ask why and he says basically because. So I say 3 other companies are offering between 17 to 18 panels, whereas they will only do 13. He claims they're wrong and gives me some nonsense reasoning. I say okay, well at least they're cheap, so I tell him thanks, I'm going to go over all my options and I call him in a few days. I got calls from him every day for the next 3 days. After 2 days of still thinking he comes back to me and says he's figured out how the other companies got more panels on the roof. They rotated them differently, geo figure. On the 3rd day I said I wasn't interested. Thank you, so I got a call that same day from his manager asking why I wasn't interested. I told him that even though they were the cheapest, their inept sales attitude and extremely pushy manner from every person I talked to there made me never want to do business with them ever. He tried to talk me out of my opinion about them and I calmly told him to never call back here again, please, and hung up. Meanwhile the nice lady at the other company now Sunrun hadn't bothered me once. I called her and said let's do it, and haven't regretted it one day since. She also worked her off to get me a very close price to the cheapest option even after I told her I was going with her company. It ended up only being like $300 more than the cheapest place. Looking at some lower-end sporty cars, I know my way around a motor. Guy pops the hood and says we like to leave everything exactly the way it was when we buy it from someone. Has cheap falling apart intake, oil spilling from both valve covers. Get inside, there's sticky black stuff around the shifter, car smells. I get not modifying it back to normal, but they couldn't even be asked to clean the car or spray some Febreze. Story 19 salesman are your parents home? Me I'm sorry, salesman your parents, the homeowners, are they home? Me I am the homeowner. Salesman you're so young me get off my porch. Story 20 was trying to buy a Honda and apply the Honda graduate program. Was signing papers for the keys when I noticed the missing amount. Sales manager told me I was getting such a good deal they couldn't add that on top, so I stopped signing and told him I'm no longer buying and won't be negotiating. Look on his face was excellent as I got up to leave. Got an even better deal no more than a week later, ha. Story 21 had a car salesman tell me debt is a good thing. He'll teach you how to manage your money when I objected to $3,000 worth of upgrades. I asked him if this was what he told all of his 22-year-old female clients, or if I was just special. He declined to answer. Story 22 we went to buy an engagement ring and the salesman looked at me right when we walked in the door and said, "We don't sell children's rings here." I was 27 at the time, and yes, petite, we went elsewhere. Story 23 he started talking numbers in an attempted bamboozle where he just spurts numbers. I'm studying for a PhD in mathematics. I can do numbers. The numbers he was saying were nonsense. I called him out on it and redid the calculations for him in real time. He stopped even trying to sell things to me. Story 24 as a person who formerly had acne, the 2 times that skin cream salespeople have tried to talk to me have basically boiled down to your skin sucks, so you should buy our product. I mean, they tried to mention it as nicely as possible, but someone mentioning that they can see my acne always just makes me feel bad. Story 25 some shitty dish guy at a Sam's. I told him we didn't live in town and he got snippy saying I kinda guessed, but I was speaking to your husband. My so practically dragged me away to avoid that confrontation. Story 26 I did this once at Sunglass Hut. I was a new employee and was learning about Oakley's. I was shown a thermoplastic pair of shades that are hyper-durable and can be bent, stepped on, and completely jacked up, but returned to their original shape after. It was sweet. Well, the next day I'm showing a pair of Oakley's to customer and want to show the feature. Turns out, I forgot which pair was thermoplastic, grabbed a wire-rimmed pair and stepped on it and the arm came off. The customer was skeptical, but I explained that I was new to the store and that I just grabbed the wrong pair. They bought from me, after my honesty, a new pair of the one I had stepped on. Story 27 was legit in the market for a new car, was 19, had money for down payment and looking to finance, went to dealership on a Saturday afternoon, told the guy what car I was interested in and wanted to test drive. Salesperson goes, "Oh well, you see, today's kind of a buying day and less of a pleasure driving day. So how about we go through some paperwork first, and if that goes well maybe you can drive one off the lot today." Told him I was fine and that I'd take my blank check to the dealership across the street, begged and pleaded with me as I walked out. Story 28 at a Honda dealership when I had to ask for the keys to my car back, for the 3rd time. I only started cursing when I asked the 4th time. Yes, the deal he offered me was great. Even looking back I was probably foolish for walking away from it, but I told him the moment I met him, and reiterated several times that I wouldn't be making a purchase that day. I foolishly handed over my keys so that they could do an appraisal on my current car which I knew they would only give me $500 for. I knew going in there that no matter what I did I was going to go home and think about it overnight. I bought a Toyota down the street 2 days later. Story 29 we get to the dealership and the car had 6K more miles on it than advertised, and they were trying to sell it for 2K more. When asked about their online ad on KBB, which showed a different price and mileage, they started arguing and getting nasty with my husband and I. That same day we looked at a handful of other cars, and we were very motivated buyers. We had 5K in hand to walk out with a car that day. Almost every single salesman tried to sell us on a more expensive vehicle or something that we weren't looking for, wound up buying a car off of Craigslist instead. Story 30 years ago my sister-in-law brother's girlfriend at the time was looking at apartments with her best friend. At one location one of them asked some oddly specific question about something i.e., do the pipes make noise at night, and the landlord replied, is this in regards to the alleged haunting? Story 31 I went to a gun store to buy a gun to kill myself. Since it was a purchase for a single use, I didn't want to spend a lot of money. The salesman was this giant macho gym bro who was pushy and condescending and emasculated me for wanting to buy a cheap gun. He was so aggressive and intimidating that he ended up embarrassing me out of buying a gun at all. I just got super nervous and left the store and didn't commit suicide. Edit about half the replies to this comment are just people asking me why I wanted a cheap gun. Firstly, I am poor and couldn't have afforded the guns dude was trying to sell me anyway. And also I thought that anything of value I owned would be better off going to my family, rather than being pawned to buy a really fancy gun just to impress some douchey salesman at the gun store. I wish I could say I'm surprised by how ignorant and insensitive people on Reddit are. Story 32 a DirecTV customer rep was very snotty. I had asked for a quote on various packages and said I was shopping around and wasn't ready to subscribe or buy anything. I wanted to get off Comcast and I was fully prepared to go with DirecTV, as it looked like they had the best deals. She kept restating her scripted info and how they were better than anyone else. She flat out said, do what you want, but you'll be back. I hung up, turned to my Comcast box, bought an HD antenna, and never paid for cable again. That was 4 years ago. Anyone for presuming my actions. I told him we weren't interested whatever silly thing he was selling. He said he needed to double check with my husband, since with many customers he works with a man has handled financial decisions like that. Story 33 I recently went through the vehicle buying process. I went to 8 different local dealerships. Every single one of them tried the lowball your trade, demand full price for the new vehicle tired old school way of doing business despite me telling them one. I used to sell cars too, and know how their game is played in too. I wasn't having any of it. One sales manager actually offered 17K when my trade was valued around 25K, then got mad when I laughed at him. Another initially offered one trade value, then tried to drop it by 2K via some number manipulation. It's as though they don't realize the consumer has literally every single resource at their disposal as the dealers now, and pricing takes 30 seconds on a laptop with mediocre Wi-Fi. I made one email blast with my trade details to a dozen dealerships out of state with a vehicle I was looking for, and within 4 hours had numbers and details worked out in writing with a dealership 160 miles away. They delivered my new vehicle the next day, no extra charge, filed paperwork with no bullshit DOC fees, offered them more upfront for my trade than any dealer locally after hours of back and forth, and drove my trade back with them, and beat my previously undefeated credit union's loan APR by 8 via their channels. The absolute easiest vehicle buying experience I've ever had. Lesson car dealers. It's not 1980 anymore. The game has changed. Story 34 guy from Verizon came to our door looking to sell us cable. He wanted to prove he could get us a better deal than the provider we already had. He asked us for basic stuff like how many TVs we had, channels we pay for, how much we pay now, etc. He put it all into his little calculator and proved to himself he couldn't get us a better deal than we had. He honestly sat there scratching his head and looking pretty embarrassed. Then he says, "Wow, you guys got a good deal, I can't beat that, have a nice day," and walked away. It was honestly pretty funny. Story 35 when I came into the city for an appointment, ready to pay cash for a vehicle he said was on the lot, and he couldn't be bothered to even show it to me, and instead took walk-in customers and completely ignored me, wrote his boss a nice letter and ended up buying a Toyota instead of a Jeep. No regrets. Story 36 I was opening up a new bank account for my new business at the bank I already have a personal checking account with. I looked at the rates for business checking and they seemed really high. The guy that's job it is to sign me up said that's just the cost of doing business. Maybe you aren't ready for it yet. I told him that if he had any idea what it costs to do business he wouldn't be working at a bank. Went down the street and got everything I wanted from another bank for free. Story 37 told a car salesman that I wanted my wife to look at the car so I would be coming back. He went and got the sales manager, who proceeded to sit down across from me and say the words I won't forget. "Let me ask you a question. Whose money is it, yours or hers?" I looked at him in shock and politely stood up and left. Never been so stunned by a salesman before or since. Story 38 I won a lawsuit when I was 25. Was in need of some kitchen appliances for the place I had started renting with my now housemates. Been 2 years. I had 15K in the bank, that, due to my being in short-term disability at the time, had to go ASAP or I would love the medical coverage I had. Went to Sears. I dress like a farmer, jeans, work boots and a clean but well-worn t-shirt. Guy spends 10 minutes glancing over at me while pretending to be on the phone. Someone else comes in. He rushes over to help them. They look at me, confused, and I shrug. I walk next door to a place called Marty's Discount Appliance and Decor. 10 minutes later, I'm walking out, shaking hands with a saleswoman who helped me find my stuff, and her coworkers start rolling out the stuff I bought. French door refrigerator double doors on the top, with a freezer drawer washer, dryer, stove, upright freezer we raise hogs for meat, need the space dishwasher, wood stove. 3 electric water heaters. Sears guy is outside smoking. Think he inhaled his but still had enough money left over I was able to take my housemates out for dinner every night for a week. Story 39 husband and I were at a furniture store. This was just before buying our first house, so we needed everything. The sales guy in the showroom seemed great. He was very friendly and helpful when talking to us. We asked him to price up what we needed: a dining table, chairs, a TV stand, a sideboard and a coffee table. It came to nearly $2,000. This was a little over what we wanted to spend, so we told him we'd just have a few minutes to ourselves to talk about it. He was like, "Sure, no problem," then proceeded to walk over to a group of his colleagues and very loudly say, "Watch and learn, fellas. This is how you make a sale. I've got them in the palm of my hands." Then carried on talking about how great his sales pitch was and how we were falling for it. I don't know if he thought we couldn't hear him, or if he just didn't care, but the comments rubbed me the wrong way. Hubby gave me a look that showed he wasn't impressed either, so we both just walked out of the store. We drove to another branch where a lovely young girl put our order through and gave us a free 5-foot mirror as well. I wish I could have seen the reaction when we walked out of the store. He was so certain we'd buy with him. Story 40 my husband and I were looking at cars. As mine is kind of a lemon, we went to the Kia dealership. The salesperson showed me a car. Tell me about this car. Salesman, it's cool. It has windows, an engine, tires. Story 41 I'm a girl. My boyfriend got me into motorcycles a few years back, and I was determined to buy my own. Once I had the money for one, we went to a handful of dealerships around town. Only one guy at one of the dealerships actually talked to me about buying a bike. Everyone else would look straight at my boyfriend and answer the questions that I was asking. There were several places we ended up walking away from even if they had a decent option for me, all because they didn't believe I actually knew enough of what I was taking about to buy my own bike. Story 42 menswear shop. Very expensive suit, me getting credit card out. Really happy with the quality of this suit, salesman. Yeah, better than that you have on. Me puts card away, thanks, but I'll pass on this one then. Story 43 went to look at a car. Salespeople saw me and went into the office. An interesting tactic since they normally come out and ask if they can help. So I open and look inside, look for rust in the usual spots, underwheel arches, etc. Look at color of exhaust. and inspect the window rubbers which looked a bit dodgy. And then I lie down to get a look underneath. It's AWD, so wanted to see if there was oil leaking from front or rear diff, etc. When the guy finally walks up to me and asks if he can call me an ambulance, made some snarky comment about me lying on the ground. At this point I was put off, but they had made me wait about 20 minutes before coming out, so I took it for a test drive. When the guy gave me the sales spiel on the car, there were 3 main points on the car. We're driving and he gets a phone call. He didn't notice I saw the screen that said office phone when it rang, and he proceeds to talk as if he's talking to a customer who's coming to buy the car in 15-minute time. He repeats the 3 sales items, and then carries on talking as if the guy is very keen. They're so obvious. I hate dealing with used car salesmen. Story 44. I was already pretty interested in buy a new console. Then the guy at GameStop was all, hey, why are you buying used games for old console while you can overpay for new games for new console? I'm trying to be responsible with my money. Oh well, we just started a GameStop credit card so you could just buy the console and games now. Did you know that? That's predatory lending at its worst, and that's not okay. Yeah, Imago. Story 45. I began researching my next car. I'm not looking to make a purchase for the next few months, but I like to do my homework. I had a couple meetings cancel one day, so I decided to run by the closest Hyundai dealer to see their new hybrids in person. I'm currently a Honda guy. I had a great conversation with the actual salesman, good test drive, and he understood my plans. We returned to the dealership and I grabbed a booklet on the Ioniq as he went to take the keys back and find me a business card. In the meantime, his sales manager approached me and asked 4 times what he needed to do to get me to leave in a new Hyundai. Refusing to listen to what both the salesman and I were saying, to top the visit off, the manager grabbed my hands and began to pray that I would wise up and get me a Hyundai. Over the next 36 hours, I received 11 phone calls and text messages from the dealership harassing me about getting back into buy, and eventually accusing me of only going in for the test drive gift card promotion that I wasn't aware of. Story 46. Not a salesman, but a waiter had once. I was out to dinner with some friends and family at some fancy pants Japanese restaurant and were about to order dessert. There were 3 dessert options on the menu which all looked very exotic and foreign to us. We ordered option 1 and 2. After we ordered, he bent down to my ear and said, "Don't get option 1. It's our manager's recipe and honestly it tastes really bad. Just go with option 3 instead." I was surprised but took his advice and thanked him while super thankful for such an honest waiter. Story 47. My girlfriend had decided she wanted a BMW 1 Series. We went down to the dealership to have a look around. She was mainly interested in the boot size as she plays in a brass band and also lugs around the music for the whole band, so needed a car that all of this would fit in. Sales guy came over. "Don't worry darling. All of your shopping will fit in there." We walked around the corner and bought a VW. Story 48. Anytime we're house hunting and the first thing out of the agent's mouth is how. I know you guys have wet dreams about Chinese investors, but for local people competing with them just to find a home, you may as well be greeting Jews with Guten Tag. Story 49. A Cabela's salesman was showing me some clothes because I asked about camo jackets and he kept directing me towards bright pink camo. When I asked where the real camo for women was, he looked confused and said, "But you are a woman, and this is pink," and pointed to it again. No, just no. Story 50. My uncle was turning 55 and recently single, so my mom thought it would be a good idea to go get him a cool computer game as a gift. She and I went to Best Buy and after looking at some options for a bit, grabbed the box for while this was in like 2010 I think. We asked the guy working in that department if he thought it would be a good game to get, to which he responds, "Sure, if you want to ruin his life." I dropped out of college because of that game. Suffice to say, we put it back on the shelf and got him one of the Civ games instead. Story 51. 21 years old looking at a new car and ID asked the salesman if they could find me the same make model but a different color and he told me no. He then proceeded to tell me to just get it repainted somewhere. Story 52. Car salesman started bad-mouthing women during the test drive. The car wasn't for him, it was for me. It should have been obvious. I was test driving the vehicle. Story 53. Politician talking himself out of a vote. Asked the guy if his party who were currently elected had secured funding for motorway and exit upgrades for our electorate and his reply was yes, funding has been made available, but I had already been on the state government site and they were only going to fund upgrades about 50 kilometers down the road from our electorate. Story 54. ADT security salesman at my door was actually contemplating it, but said I would take the info and talk to my wife. "Do you have to get her permission for everything?" I paused and went wide-eyed and then said, "I talked to my wife about financial decisions. Get the off my property." Story 55. I had a phone salesman call me up and try to get me to extend my phone plan. "If you sign up now you also get a laptop." "What kind of laptop?" It's red." Story 56. Went to Myrtle Beach with my family. My sister and I are the type of people to wear jeans or pants no matter what. We were walking through the shops and this employee yells at us to buy some shorts so we could fit in or something. I just remember he had an attitude, and why would I pack pants on vacation and then wear them if I didn't want to? Story 57. Looking at a wedding venue. It was lovely, the sort of place we were looking to get wed, and the price was okay, but the saleswoman just did a bad job. "This is where you and your groomsmen can hang out before the wedding. It's our man cave. Hell, be kept out of the way in the man cave. You can have beers with your boys in the man cave." Beers with the boys. She just kept dropping these phrases in. They were a bit stupid to start with, but it was nothing but offensive and grating by the end. It totally turned me off the whole place, and my now wife agreed with me. It felt patronizing, artificial, and just lazy. Story 58 for me, it wasn't the salesman but the financing guy. I was out car shopping, and found one I liked at the first place I went, but of course wanted to check out a couple other places. They were pushing a no-interest financing thing. I wasn't planning on doing financing at all, but for zero interest I could just let my salesman get that and then just pay it all off a week later. So the salesman suggested I just chat with the finance guy before I left. That guy was acted like I was some huge for wanting to actually look into more than one car before making a big purchase like that, and just would not stop. I generally try not to be rude to people who are just tiring to do their jobs, but I had to leave his office while he was talking because he would not stop. Told the salesman on the way out that if I didn't come back, finance was why.